During the summer of 2023, I played a ton of golf and I had an absolute blast with it. Unfortunately, the two pairs of golf cleats that I had were completely blown through by the end of the season. Today, I'm going to be making myself some golf cleats. I'm going to take the spikes from these Adidas ZG23 Vents, and then I'm going to use the uppers from these Nike Lebron 21 Abalones that just dropped recently. I'm really excited to put these things together, but the first thing that we got to do is separate the soles from both pairs of kicks.
For the golf cleats, I'll start my sole separation by removing the insoles and the laces. Then I'll pour some acetone into the footbeds of the shoes, swish it around, and apply some clamps to the uppers. After several minutes, I'll take a bone folder to peel the soles away from the uppers and then blast the seams using steam from a steam gun to try to heat up the factory glue and make it so that I can peel the uppers away from the soles. The sole separation for the Lebrons was a lot different than the golf cleats. For this, I used a bone folder to try to pry the soles away from the uppers. It was a lot more delicate of a process because I didn't want to damage the uppers in any way, and I knew that heat and chemicals could definitely do that. Once I had pried the uppers away to the best of my abilities, I sprayed a little bit of acetone in the footbed of the shoe, which broke down the factory glue a little bit more and allowed me to use my bone folder and a razor blade to successfully separate the soles from the uppers.
Now that the soles and the uppers have been successfully separated, it's time to get them all cleaned up and prepped so I can glue them together.
To begin my prep work, I started working on the soles. For this part of the process, I needed to remove as much of the factory glue and debris as I possibly could. I broke up my Dremel and my grinding bit and ground away as much glue and debris as I possibly could. Once I had finished up using the Dremel, I broke out some acetone and some cotton balls, and I used that to remove as much of the remaining factory glue and debris as I could. After prepping the soles, it was time to get the uppers prepped. I did this in a pretty similar fashion, starting off with a Dremel and my grinding bit, but for the uppers, I had to be a lot more careful because I wanted to make sure that I didn't destroy the Abalone pattern. You also need to make sure that you don't cut through any of the stitching, so it's really important that you use a light hand with the Dremel. I followed the Dremel up with a little bit of acetone on some Q-tips, and let me tell you that this was one of the most painstakingly boring parts of this process. I had to literally peel off every single bit of factory glue that I could by hand. Once I finished picking off as much glue as I could by hands, I broke out the acetone and cotton balls, and still using a light hand, tried to wipe off as much glue as I possibly could.
Now that all the prep work is done, it's time to get everything bonded together so we can get this project finalized. To begin this bonding process, I'm first going to align the uppers on the soles, and then using a heat erasable pen, I'll trace off the areas where the soles are going to fall on the uppers. This will help me to get nice clean lines when it comes to my application of my glue. Once the uppers have been appropriately traced to the soles, it's time to get my glue applied. For this part of the process, I utilize Barge Super Stick cement. To get the Super Stick on there, I'm going to start off by applying 2 light layers approximately 15 minutes apart from one another. I always find that using 2 layers of Super Stick helps to give me a better bond at the end of the day, which means that the sneakers will be wearable for longer. Once I have my 2 layers of Barge applied, I'm going to let it cure for approximately 5 to 6 hours. Letting the Super Stick cure for 5 to 6 hours will allow me to place both components on top of one another without them immediately tacking and sticking to each other. After 5 or 6 hours of curing, it's time to get these things bonded together. For this pair specifically, I'm going to start by bonding at the heel. To do this, I'm going to take a heat gun. Applying some heat will reactivate the Super Stick, which will allow me to press these surfaces together firmly using my hands and get them bonded. After I finish bonding at the heel, it's time to get the toe bonded together. I do the heel first because that allows me to get my alignment just right, and then I do my toe second because that will help to pull the medial and the lateral sides of the shoe in place. Once the heel and the toe have been successfully bonded, I'm then going to apply heat in small sections along both the lateral and the medial side of the shoe and bond section by section. Once I have the edges entirely bonded together, then it's going to be time to hit the inside of the shoe with a little bit of heat. This will allow me to apply even heat throughout the entire shoe so I can get the footbed bonded together. So far, this LeBron 21 Golf Cleat Hybrid has been coming along really nicely, but unfortunately, I just ran into a little bit of a hiccup. As you can see here, the bond on both the medial and the lateral sides towards the toe didn't take so well because of this patterned upper. So I'm gonna have to go through and do a little bit of touch-up work to get these things completely re-glued together appropriately.
As soon as I started to do my touch-up work, I recognized that this glue job was about to fail me. So instead of wasting any more time, I decided to break out the steam gun and do a quick separation from the soles to the uppers. I'm really glad that I did this because I found out that the bond was incredibly weak and would not have held up on the golf course. Once I had everything torn apart again, it was time to go through every single part of the preparation process for a second time. I started with a Dremel to my soles, this time making sure that I tried to dig out a little bit of extra space so that the uppers would fit a little bit better. Then I went through and I retraced where the soles were going to fall on the uppers and broke out a better grinding tool to help to actually shave off the top layer of the uppers, which was causing a lot of adhesion problems when it came time to the gluing process. I also shaved down some of these protrusions from the uppers that were giving me a little bit of trouble with the re-glue, so then that way the soles would be a little bit more flush with the uppers. Once I was done with the Dremel, I broke out the cotton balls and the acetone again. This time, I was a lot more liberal with my use of the acetone because I wanted to make sure that I had gotten rid of any glue that I had laid down and any sort of remaining factory glue and debris that could impede this project. Then I retraced the uppers and the soles again to make sure that these lines were going to be nice and crisp. I laid down some tape on the uppers because this time I decided that I was going to use an adhesion promoter to try to make sure that this re-glue would not fail me for a second time. Once I had laid down my tape lines, I broke out some paper towels and taped those into place to make sure that I wouldn't get any sort of adhesion promoter anywhere but exactly where I wanted it to be.
During my touch-ups, I ran into a little bit of trouble and I had to separate the uppers from the soles because the bond was just not holding correctly. But with my first failed re-glue comes the opportunity to learn, and I have prepped these things and have them ready for another re-glue. I've also taped off the uppers in their entirety because now I'm going to place a product that I've never used before to help to provide a stronger bond. Bulldog Adhesion Promoter is the newest product that I'm going to be trying, and this was recommended to me by Shoe Culture 615, who is one of the best sneaker restoration artists in the game. Really appreciate you, man. Thank you for the tip when it came down to this re-glue.
Since I had everything taped off on my uppers, I was able to spray down my Bulldog Adhesion Promoter and let it rest for about 5 or 6 minutes before I was ready to apply my Barge Super Stick. I applied the Super Stick in 2 layers, approximately 15 minutes apart from one another, to both the soles and the uppers. When applying to the uppers, I was sure to remove the masking tape as quickly as possible so that way I didn't ruin any of the lines that I had created. Again, I let the barge cure for about 5 to 6 hours before heating it to reactivate it and bond the soles to the uppers. I started at the heels, making sure that I had a nice crisp alignment before working my way partially down the medial and the lateral sides to make sure that I was following my lines to the best of my ability. Then I hit the toes to make sure I didn't have any sort of weird curvature in the kicks, and I finished up by hitting the internal components of the shoes to make sure that the footbed had a nice bond as well. Afterwards, I laced these kicks up and they were ready to roll.
It's been a while in the making now, but these Lebron 21 Abalone golf cleats are finally ready. Let's take a closer look before I bring these things out to the course and start to playing them. This project was an incredibly challenging one. This was a really difficult set of uppers to work with because whatever this kind of outer sheath is that gives this abalone pattern is definitely not a very adherent surface, which meant that I actually had to remove a whole bunch of it in order to get these uppers to stick to the soles. Because this is a set of golf cleats, I need these things to have a real nice strong bond so that way I don't swing myself out of my shoes. Luckily, after some experimentation and hard work, I was able to get these parts together successfully with a nice strong bond. At the end of the day, they still look absolutely amazing and are going to be one of the freshest pairs of golf cleats out on the course. While this set of golf cleats was an especially challenging project, I'm really excited with how they turned out, and I cannot wait to be playing in them this entire golf season. Even if I might not be the best one out on the course, I'm certainly going to look the best out on the course, and this pair of cleats is going to get me there in style. Hopefully, you guys learned a little bit about my customization process during this video, and I'm really curious to know what you guys think about this set of cleats, so definitely make sure to let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much to everybody that stuck around until the cold, bitter end of this video. You guys already know I'm Sailboat, and I'm out of here.